Oh, sorry about that. Welcome back, everyone, to Calliope Music Reviews. My name is Colin, and this is the Music Canon. Oh boy, today I'm going to be talking about this new collab album between Canadian R&B lover boys Party Next Door and Aubrey Meet the Graham, also known as Drake. This record is titled Some Sexy Songs for You and sees the two Toronto natives return to a familiar, sultry alternative R&B and trap soul sound. Party Next Door, or Jaron Brathwaite, has been signed to Drake's OVO label since 2013, but really started to gain some mainstream attention following his successful fourth self-titled LP just last year. This success, a complimentary R&B style, and possibly that album cover has led to Jaron finally getting the chance to play along with the big dog himself, Drake. Now, if you've been on the internet at all or know anything about hip-hop or rap music, then chances are you know about the monumental beef between Kendrick Lamar and Drake that has been going down for the past year. The details of that beef are beyond the scope of this review, but essentially, Drake was called out for being a pedophile, a neglectful father, and just an abhorrent human being. Drake fired back shots of his own, of course, but seeing the massive success of Kendrick's diss track Not Like Us, his follow-up album GNX, and the most viewed Super Bowl halftime show of all time, it's safe to say that Drake lost the battle in pretty embarrassing fashion. So this new record, Some Sexy Songs for You, serves as Drake's first full-length album release since losing his grip on the entirety of hip-hop and rap culture, really. Before I get into the nitty-gritty of what Drake has to say on this record, I first want to talk about the sound and the overall feel of the album. The record employs moody background synths that set a sensual shadow for murky keys, calm soul samples, and simple trap drum work. The tones here are palpable and pretty dreamy in their luciferous and clear textures. However, the production grows pretty tiresome as it utilizes the same traditional trap hi-hat patterns and terraforming 808 bass in these almost entirely bare environments of soft synths and slow reverb vocal samples. Jaron and Drake's vocal flows follow a similar monotony, going on and on with the same auto-tune tremolo effects and dry vocal runs throughout all 73 minutes of this thing. Drake's voice is especially dull, almost immediately running dry in its unvaried and tedious nature. Party Next Door does provide a nice contrast to Drake's voice through a more substantial auto-tuned heft, but a similar overabundance of vocal runs and even more flat attempts at melody just end up attributing to the dragging nature of this album's overall sound. And this album drags. I mean, its mostly moderate tempos and sedate R&B movements are just tough to get through when they're hitting you one after another with only the occasional exception. Now, there are a few exceptions, like the hard-hitting bass and cloud rap-esque vocal sample on Brian Steele, or the exciting synth-pop dance number on Nokia. Unfortunately, one of the more interesting cuts comes with the Latin-influenced Meet Your Padre with Mexican singer Chino Pacas. This song is a bit frustrating because it offers a nice change of pace with some delicate flamenco acoustics and Brazilian funk percussion. But man, Drake puts on this heavily auto-tuned faux Latin accent that is just painfully out of touch and sounds even worse when he tries this deeper vocal refrain that just sucks out any fun that the song may have provided otherwise. This is disappointing, but there is actually one more positive production outlier on this album, and that comes from the final track, Greedy. This track is particularly dark and sinks into a despondent, surround sound bass line and a creepily twangy key lead. Drake sounds pretty thoughtful here and accepts his greedy methods of love as the instrumental transitions into a wiry synth progression, some bright chimes, and even some rain-stored ambiance. This serves as a pretty striking outro and really highlights the cinematic and conceptual potential of the duo PARTYNEXTDOOR and Drake. Now, I wish I could say the same for the rest of the album, and it's sharing a similar amount of emotional depth as that final track, but the lyrical content ends up being much closer to the variance or lack thereof seen in the instrumentals. I would say about 98% of this record is strictly about Sharon and Drake's pursuit of sex and intimacy, utilizing pretty weak metaphors and simple luxury imagery to court women. Now, this makes sense considering the title of the album, but the countless lines about spending money for a woman's love and expecting some sort of loyalty out of material provisions can get worn out pretty quickly. The fourth track, Crying in Chanel, kind of points out the little hypocrisy that Drake has always struggled with in his music, at least in my mind. In the second verse, he asks why his love interest is feeling so down despite his best efforts to love her through taking her shopping. While one can understand Drake's feelings being hurt as the girl seems ungrateful for his apparent love language, that line of thinking fails to register that a love language is how one prefers to receive love as well as give it out. So it's almost alarming with the lack of awareness here that someone may want to receive love in a manner aside from material gifts. And this is just but one example of an incredibly common theme of blatant obliviousness and priority for material comfort over everything else on this record and Drake's entire discography, really. The album also just lacks any real rhyme schemes and has a knack for some pretty goofy wordplay like this line on Small Town Fame or this line on Glorious. The rest of the subject matter, as one may imagine, sees Drake loosely address the beef with Kendrick and the rest of the rap industry. And I say loosely because Drake essentially tries to move on from the beef, repeatedly reminding us that he never wanted a rap beef in the first place and that he's just trying to get the party. Probably the most substantial lyrical track here is the 10th track, Give Me a Hug, where Drake directly addresses the rap beef with Kendrick as well as many other rappers involved in bashing him throughout this whole saga. Well, again, not really. Although he does mention some comments from Kanye West, Joe Budden, and Kendrick Lamar, he doesn't really add anything in the realm of retaliation and instead attempts to flip the narrative as if he was coming back from winning a war and is now able to celebrate with those who stuck by him. It's honestly one of the more energetic and appealing tracks on this record, but falls apart when you realize he's coming back to the strip club he frequents, even naming several strippers I guess he's quite acquainted with. The refrain on this song, give me a hug, is honestly hilarious and is the musical equivalent of a high school senior asking freshman girls for a hug on their way to PE. But anyways, like I said, the essence of Drake's message on this song and the entire album really is that he's done with beefing and that he really only cares about turning people up and entertaining in that way. And that's a fine message, one that could help ease an audience into a new era of continued carefree Billboard Top 100 hits. But it's a message that ultimately flops because of this record's inability to turn up. Some Sexy Songs for You is a largely reflective record about toxic love and self-indulgence, often void of the energy required to push more celebratory messages. And the familiar motifs of drug use and one-night stand crash outs don't necessarily add any new hope to a career that is seemingly stagnant due to all the negative publicity that has come Drake's way. Party Next Door kind of falls right in line with the same type of lyricism, just confined to shorter verses and the lead melodies. Of course, I would be wrong to say that this album is void of any worthwhile message. As mentioned previously, the last track, Greedy, gives a glimpse into an honest self-reflection of the pain Drake has put onto others for his adultery and detached lifestyle. A track like Die Trying also helps to ground the rappers, reminding us that they are human as well and have honest vices, like Drake's first verse on the song. These moments are especially important and impactful moments on the record, but unfortunately do not reflect the vast majority of the experience you're going to get to listening to this album. Aside from the definitive hit Nokia and the lustrous outro on Greedy, there just really isn't much to hang on to from this album. To put it plainly, it is much too slow, repetitive, and vain for its own good, and the effects of those aspects are only multiplied considering the record's length and overall lack of creativity. So with that being said, I'm gonna have to give Some Sexy Songs for You a 2 out of 10. As mentioned before, the best takeaways here are the tracks Nokia and Greedy for sure. And alright, that will do it for the video. I really hope you enjoyed this quick review on Some Sexy Songs for You. As always, I highly encourage you to form your own opinion, of course, and let me know what you think of this record in the comments below. Also, feel free to suggest any other artists or albums that you would like me to cover or review on this channel in the future. And with that, this has been Party Next Door Drake, the Music Canon. I will see you in the next one.